Welcome to JustACup on Believe. I am Coach Brian Fetzer, and I am so excited for you to tune in to JustACup, which is an organic conversation with some of the world's greatest athletes and the coaches and administrators, and everybody's helped get them to that point in time in their life. And today we are going to stick with the Olympic spirit, and I am so thrilled to have with me Bailey Moody on. Bailey, I'm so fired up to get in and to talk about the Paralympic side of the Olympics with you. So welcome, and I can see you got a nice little shot back there of Olympic Village.
Yeah, if you want to see it, I'm sitting on my porch right now because my roommates are all inside, because the way that our suites are set up, it's 3 bedrooms, so there's 6 of us in a suite, and so I'm trying to find a spot to talk to you. But yeah, the village is behind me. It's beautiful.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a pretty inside view that somebody's not going to necessarily get all the time. So if you're listening to us on the podcast version, you're going to have to go over to YouTube and see a little bit of what Bailey's showing us. So Bailey, I want to talk about. I mean, you're on the U.S. wheelchair basketball team, and want to kind of go back. I mean, your story is kind of amazing. Back when you were 10 years old, they had a diagnosis. Did you have bone cancer? And you spent 8 months in chemotherapy. And then that decision had to be made, with the amputee part of it. And you guys chose that. I mean, obviously you're 10. That's a hard time to go through things. That whole decision process in that time, what do you even remember from back then?
Yeah, I remember a good deal of it. I was 10. I was super athletic. I still am. I love sports, but at 10, I was still trying to find what I loved. So I was playing everything. I was playing softball and tennis and volleyball and basketball and doing all these things. And so I was having pretty severe knee pain, but we didn't think much of it because I was playing so many sports at the time that we thought it was some sort of injury or growing pains. After about 6 weeks of continued pain, I was diagnosed with bone cancer, osteosarcoma, and from there started treatment. I did about 8 months of chemotherapy, and about halfway through the process was forced to make the decision about how they were going to remove the tumor. With childhood bone cancer, they can't just do chemo. They have to also go in and take it out. So I ended up, long story short, choosing one of 3 not so great options. It was either keep my leg and lose all of my ability to play sports again but look normal, or lose my leg, look abnormal and stick out but be able to be athletic and play sports again and just live an active lifestyle. So I ended up choosing a rare form of amputation called a rotationplasty, and that was basically to resume the active lifestyle that I wanted to have as a 10-year-old, and the life that I wanted to have, and continue sports as long as I could, but also just be active and not have to worry about having to have more surgeries, but just be able to live my life.
That is, it's so impressive. You have, obviously you have a family, a support system around you that has to be amazing, because just going through challenges as a kid, I mean, it takes a lot. Then you add that to it. What is your support system like?
Yeah, for sure. My family is they were there through everything. They're my biggest fans now that I'm doing what I'm doing at such a high level and playing wheelchair basketball at the Paralympics. My family's my biggest fans, but they've also seen me at my lowest points, and they help walk through that with me, and they walked through that, and they experienced the hard of that with me. And so, my parents and my siblings were the closest to it, and they're just they're my rock, and I couldn't have done it without them.
Now, you just mentioned Paralympics, which, I mean, the coverage is great. I was watching some earlier this morning. I was watching the men play Spain.
Yeah.
Date this episode a little bit, but I was watching the men play Spain, and I'd be the first one to admit I'm not super familiar with the sport or the rules. So, I mean, if you could give us that quick version of the differences between wheelchair basketball and non-wheelchair basketball.
Yeah, so wheelchair basketball, very, very similar to stand-up basketball. As far as if you know how basketball is played, you could watch a wheelchair basketball game and be able to follow it totally fine and understand what's going on. Most of the rules are the same. The only things that differ, like, slightly are our dribble rule is different. So for stand-up basketball, you have like two-step rule where you have to put the ball on the floor and you can take 2 steps. So for us, it's you can't touch your wheels more than twice in between dribbles. So you can touch your wheels twice, you got to put the ball on the floor. We also don't have a double dribble. So if I pick the ball back up and stop, I can keep dribbling again. But if I touched my wheels more than twice in between dribbles, that would be a travel. And then fouls are basically the same. You hit somebody's chair, you make contact with their arm, it's a foul. And then also something that's very different about wheelchair basketball, and this is true for para athletics in general, is when you're working with athletes with disabilities, because everybody's disabilities are so different, every para sport has like a disability classification system.
Mm-hmm.
So with wheelchair basketball, we're given basically assigned a number of points that we are. So um, the more ability you have, the more points you're assigned, and it goes from a 1.0 to a 4.5. And then when you're putting a lineup on the floor, you can only have a total of 14 points on the court at a time. So it kind of levels the playing field a little bit. And it's true for all para sports. The classification systems just differ slightly depending on whatever sport you're playing.
It's amazing. Now I'm going to ask you this question, because when you look at basketball, you know, there's obviously differences that are differentiators. So, I mean, you've got, and you know, a team could go very, very tall, or they can go short and quick. Is there a skill set that kind of differentiates with the team, you know, in wheelchair basketball? Obviously, height is not going to be, you know, a differentiating factor, but what are some tactics or thought process that go into kind of the wheelchair side?
Yeah, it's very similar to stand-up basketball. I think the classification system changes things a little bit because you can't typically, like, unless they're the exact same classification, you don't necessarily like sub just one player for another. Sometimes you got to put 2 in order to put 1 in. So you have different lineups that basically do different things. So you'll have your pressing lineup, you'll have your big lineup, you'll have all of those things. And the way that you sub is similar. You're just usually subbing more than one player at a time, unless you're making like a 1-for-1 switch.
Interesting. Fascinating. I mean, shooting is shooting. I mean, you know, what do you consider yourself? Are you a passer? Are you a defender? Are you a shooter? I mean, what is, you know, kind of your, I'll say, specialty in hoops?
My specialty, I am definitely a shooter. I think our team this year, though, is the most shooters I've ever seen on a team at a time, just because anybody from anywhere on the floor can hit at any time, which is really good and a huge skill set to have. I'm also very quick, so I'm good with my chair, and my straight line speed is really fast, so that's definitely an advantage in my game as well.
What led you to basketball? You said early on, when you're a kid, you're playing a bunch of different things. I mean, I know I did. You know, what kind of like geared you towards the basketball side of the sport that you chose to be a 2-time? And we'll get back to the first part of the 2-time thing, but what led you to basketball?
Basketball was always the sport I kind of gravitated back towards. I'm not a runner. I've never claimed to be a runner. I need some sort of something that I'm chasing when I'm running. So basketball is good because it's short and quick, and then there's so many things that are going on at a time. So, you know, I'm thinking about shooting and passing and dribbling and different skill sets and tactics that just keep the game moving really quickly and keep a lot of things happening and a lot of different things happening. And I think that's what I love about it.
That's awesome. So this is your second Paralympics. So, I mean, you get to play in Tokyo, which we'll talk about the differences there. But, you know, I mean, you guys won a bronze medal in Tokyo. Now you're getting to come to Paris. the opening ceremonies, obviously in Tokyo, are completely different. I saw your Instagram video earlier, which if you don't follow Bailey, you need to follow the real Bailey Moody on Instagram and TikTok, because there's some incredible videos, and you guys get a little behind the scenes preparation for the opening ceremonies. What was that like being in the opening ceremonies in the Olympics? What an opportunity.
Yeah. So when I was in Tokyo, there weren't any fans anywhere. So we didn't go to opening in Tokyo because we had a game the next day. A lot of times, if you're competing the next day, you won't go to opening ceremonies. But we dressed up and we took the pictures and we did the thing. And then we went inside and we watched it on TV. So we just didn't get the whole experience. So then being here and being in Paris and getting to dress up and take the pictures and then actually go to opening was really cool and really fun to experience. And walking into that stadium and seeing it full and seeing everybody cheering and waving and yelling was just unreal.
It's amazing. I mean, the reports that I've kind of heard is, the crowds, they're very similar to what it was a couple of weeks ago in the opening Olympic Games for the Paralympics, which, as an athlete, that has to be such an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I was coming up to my room earlier because we were watching the men's game, and then we were watching another one of the women's games, and I ran into some of the guys' team on my way up, and I was like, "How was it?" And they said it was packed, like it was so loud in there, it was so cool, but they could feel it like in their chest. So I'm super excited to experience that as well.
That's amazing. What is obviously you've got to experience the Olympic Village one time, and you just showed us earlier. You showed a kind of shot of what it's like there. What is the unique kind of experience in the Olympic Village that maybe you didn't get to experience the last time in Tokyo, but you're going to have an opportunity to experience now?
Yeah, this village is super cool. In Tokyo, everything about the village was kind of the same, except for we had to spit in a tube every morning for a COVID test, and then there was plexiglass in the dining halls, and everybody was in masks. But as far as interactions in the village went, it was very similar to it is now. I'm not noticing many differences, but there is a lot of like interaction with other athletes that we get to have that was not necessarily the case in Tokyo, just because everybody was concerned about making sure they didn't get sick and making sure they were healthy to play. So there's just not that like looming fear that there was in Tokyo.
That makes total sense. Is there a sport? I know, I mean, you have to be focused on your games because your first game is tomorrow, which would be, is that correct? So
it's tomorrow, August 30th at 4 p.m. Paris time.
Well, this will be getting released tomorrow, so it'll be perfect timing for folks to got the chance to watch the game. But is there an event or a sport that you want to go watch yourself?
I would love to see sitting volleyball in person. I love that sport, and I love watching it on TV, and I love the girls. So I know some of the ladies on that team, and they're just wonderful, and so I want to watch them compete. They're also very dominant. It's super fun to watch other wheelchair basketball games, and also I'd love to see wheelchair rugby. So just in general, I don't know. We didn't get to go to any of the events in Tokyo either, because a lot of the cool part about being an athlete is you can go to all these events and get athlete tickets and go see other sports, and we didn't get to do that in Tokyo. So if I get the chance, it would be cool to do that here.
You are listening to Just a Cup on Believe, an organic conversation with some of the world's greatest athletes. And fortunately, I have one of the world's greatest athletes, Bailey Moody, on with us right now. Hey, if you're liking this show, please subscribe, like it, put some comments in it. Let's continue to help it grow. We're over 50 countries right now of individuals watching and listening, and we're going to keep having that grow. And Bailey, we're, talking about, basketball in general, but specifically wheelchair basketball. I mean, you play in college. And as I was doing research and kind of finding out, I mean, there's a collegiate national championship for wheelchair basketball, and you play for down in SEC country. And I'll give you a little, for those watching, there's a little little houndstooth. It's very Alabama, little houndstooth hat. Because you go to the University of Alabama. One, what led you to go to Alabama? And two, how did you figure out about playing in college?
So I think I should preface with the fact that I grew up an Auburn fan. Both of my mom, she played soccer at Auburn, and then my aunt rode equestrian at Auburn, and then my uncle went to Auburn, and my dad went to Auburn for grad school. So
How
I'm
do
an
they let
Auburn
you in the
fan.
house? How do they let you even in the house?
You
Goodness
know,
gracious.
yeah, it's a funny thing. So Bama was very much not on my radar for just a little bit because I was just didn't know better and really was just like I can't betray my parents like that. Plus, I love Auburn. And then I went to Alabama and visited and was like, that's so silly of me. This is such a wonderful school and I love it there. And I am converted and I am a traitor in my family, whatever you want to call it. My parents are very supportive of it. Um, Free
They're not yet
college is
roll
always very
tide though. They,
exciting. Roll Tide all the way.
I said they're
Um,
not in roll tide.
so my dad fully bought in. My siblings are kind of split. My mom, she so fully supportive, but like that being her, like Auburn being her alma mater, and she like will not wear anything that just has the Alabama A on it. She'll wear crimson and white, and she'll wear things that say Alabama wheelchair basketball. And then that's kind of her extent. But
Interesting.
she also loves it. She's like, I can't find anything to hate about it. I love it there. So it's great. It's been so good, and I'm starting my master's there in the fall. So it's been so exciting.
What now? The recruiting process or the decision process. Did you go there fully intending to play wheelchair basketball at Bama, or was that something that happened while you were there?
I did. So there's a recruiting process for wheelchair basketball, just like you'd be recruited for any other collegiate sport. So I talked to coaches. I went on official visits. I did all of those things, and I was looking at schools like Illinois, University of Illinois, University of Texas at Arlington. There's a team at Whitewater, Wisconsin, and in Arizona. And, I went on my trip to Bama and it just blew away all of the other schools. And it had everything I was looking for. It was close to home. The program at Bama and the facilities there at Bama and just the development of that program is just huge. And so, you know, uh, being able to see that and see how far ahead they are, it was like a no-brainer. That was where I was gonna be, and that's where I wanted to be, and just the culture of the team and the coaches and everyone. It's just incredible. And also outside of basketball, like I wanted a life outside of basketball, and I wanted a social life outside of basketball. I wanted somewhere I was gonna fit in. I wanted to be close to home. I wanted all of these things that, Bama brought the whole package.
So, how close or is the wheelchair, the adaptive sports, and the intercollegiate NCAA sports, how intertwined or are they completely separate at Bama? I know every school is a little different, but is there much crossover or is there none?
Sadly, there's not really any crossover. I've been working really hard to merge those two areas, and the other athletes on campus seem to be very supportive of it, but we aren't housed under athletics. And under the athletic department, so we don't get those same benefits and we don't have the same resources. We're fully outside funded. We have donors that fund us. And so, that causes some barriers there as far as just not being in the same spaces at the same time as other athletes. And, we're working really hard as a program, and there's a lot of athletes on campus that want us to be a part, but we're still taking steps there.
I think with anything, it's a process, and the NCAA. I mean, that's something the NCAA should, get behind. I think fully they should be something they should get behind. So within, where do you guys play games at Alabama?
We have our own facility at Alabama. So we play all of our games in our facility, Strand Harden Arena. It's built just for us. It's built for wheelchair athletes. So our locker room is built to our specifications. Everything is built for us so that we can thrive as athletes, which is really awesome.
That's huge. That's amazing. I mean, myself being in college athletics for 20 plus years, I never even heard of that, which is a complete travesty that there's not more opportunities out there. But the fact that I was involved in college athletics for that long and never knew is just a shame. It's ridiculous. So there's got to be ways. There's got to be some people. So if you're listening and you can think of ways to champion this cause, I mean, it's crazy. I had Chris Mack, who is the national team coach for U.S. Para track and field, on the show as our last guest, and he was talking about the training differences, and he's like, "There's really no training differences. You're an athlete. You're competing. You're coaching. You're doing things." And I don't think a lot of individuals understand that. I mean, you guys lift weights. You do everything the same, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's the same amount of hours. We're doing the same things. We're competing at the same level. We're working just as hard, and we need the same fuel for our bodies and the same recovery and the same things that help us to thrive as athletes. And so we need to be treated